TARIFFS Built America. Free trade hollowed it out. And today I'm going to show you why tariffs work, why Trump's tariffs helped the United States, and why Trump should bring industry home is the only path to American strength. Let's break the myth that Congress and a lot of liberal media says that Trump's tariffs are going to hurt the economy, and a lot of economists say that Trump's tariffs are going to cause a recession, which is simply false. So I'm going to break this myth. So in this video, you will learn or you will hear about what a tariff is, why imports hurt the GDP, why exports grow wealth, why outsourcing kills jobs, what Trump's tariffs achieved, the deals China signed, times tariffs built America, and how tariffs can rebuild our economy today. Let's just start simple. A tariff is a tax on imported goods. That's literally it. That's all it is. A tax on imported goods. When another country ships a product into the United States, we tax that product. So if we just say, for example, Apple ships a lot from Vietnam. We take a tax on that. So it could be like 10%, 15%, 20%. We take a tax on that, and we take that as revenue. Tariffs do two things. Raise revenue for the United States, level the playing field against unfair labor and subsidies. Countries like China use $1 an hour wages, state-run labor, forced labor, environmental cheating, currency manipulation, government subsidies. No American worker can compete with that. Tariffs will fix that imbalance. So, bar chart. China averages manufacturing versus China. China has $2.90 per hour wages. United States has $23 to $27 per hour wages, according to the BLS and CIC data. So here's the formula for the GDP. So this is how tariffs help the GDP a lot. So the tariffs the GDP formula is C plus I plus G plus X minus M. When imports outgrow or more than exports, it hurts the GDP. In 2022, the trade deficit hit $1 trillion, according to BAA, which is the largest American trade deficit of all time. That means $1 trillion is left out of our economy. $1 trillion didn't pay United States workers. $1 trillion didn't go to U.S. factories. $1 trillion didn't raise the U.S. GDP. A line graph of United States trade deficit, 1980 to 2023. You'll see this on the screen. A steady decline into the negatives. So ever since Ronald Reagan took office, there's still during Ronald Reagan's presidency, there was still manufacturing industry, but not like the 1940s, where when you saw the 1940s, we were tariffing nations, and we were the number one industry in the world. Not until Bill Clinton and George Bush did China really become a power in manufacturing. And people get stuff cheaper in there, because when you buy something from America, it's going to be more expensive but better quality, because we actually pay our workers, compared to China, where they pay $1, $2.90 an hour. So that hurts the U.S. economy a lot, and we haven't recovered ever since. The U.S. economy also has taken a big hit. Obviously, we've had $1 trillion in trade deficits ever since 1980. This was not a thing beforehand. Obviously, the U.S. national debt was always here, but not the trade deficit, right? And other countries, for example, do have tariffs on us. Other countries do have tariffs on us. So the thing of we need free trade, a lot of economists say that. Well, there is no free trade here. There is no free trade here. Free trade doesn't exist anymore. Countries tariff us, and they will continue to tariff us. France tariffs us, Europe tariffs us. So when we do it, we're trying to promote free trade, which I would agree with if countries followed free trade, which they don't. They don't follow free trade. We need to start tariffing tax to get our industry back. This is why we need industry at the United States instead of buying. So when we manufacture here more, we get more jobs. That's common sense. When you have more jobs, when you need more jobs, people will fill those jobs. Innovation helps a lot too. Those two things matter a lot, but jobs is what matters the most. Our unemployment is around 4.4% right now. Once Trump's tariffs really hit, which in the Q4, according to Reuters, that's when Europe and that's when India and all these countries we got deals with to start buying our U.S. made stuff. So U.S. crude oil, U.S. steel, U.S. defense stuff, missiles, right, guns. That's when the stuff really starts to ramp up, Q4. And you should expect to see a unemployment drop probably under 3%, under 4% eventually, because tariffs help the economy in getting people employed because we need jobs for the manufacturing to send out to other countries. That's common sense, little common sense. It also helps innovation, supply chains, tax revenue, the GDP, obviously, because as I stated, when we export more, the GDP increases compared to when we import a lot for the last 20 years, where we imported more than we've exported, which in the first time in American history, in the 1990s and in the 2000s, is when that really started to happen. Because we started losing businesses to China, we started losing Europe to China, and we obviously started losing Asia to China. So we lost a lot of our GDP there. Also, it boosts wages and also increases national security, since we are not an import economy, we are an export economy. That helps a lot. When everything is made overseas, America becomes dependent and weak. That's common sense. And that's how America has been for the last 20 years, 30 years, where we've been dependent and weak and dependent on other nations. We can end China's economy so quickly if we start getting people to start buying our manufacturing, and China loses out on 20 to 30% of their GDP. During COVID, we could get masks, gloves, medicine, microchips, ventilators, or basic chemicals. We were outsourced our entire supply chains. Tariffs pushed companies to make things here again. According to U.S. antibiotics, according to the Department of Commerce, 90% of U.S. antibiotics ingredients come from China. And another stat from Semiconductor Industry Association, 80% of microchips come from Taiwan. So we're not even making medical equipment here anymore. Medical chemicals, medical stuff to keep people healthy. We're not even making that here anymore. We've become so dependent that we get 80 to 90% of our medical stuff, like gloves, masks, medicine, microchips, ventilator, basic chemicals, from other countries. That's how dependent the United States is. That's how dependent we are. They're buying from Asia instead of making our stuff here when we're perfectly capable of making our stuff here. We just don't want to pay people. We don't want to pay more. So the reason why tariffs help that a lot is that when you tax stuff, people have to pay more. And that also incentivizes to start making stuff here and to stop importing from other countries. Overall, making us less dependent on other countries. No one else. You could not solve this problem without tariffs. In any way, you're just no way you solve this problem without tariffs. We are in a national security crisis when Joe Biden was president. We were so dependent on other countries. Search it up, put it in any AI. We were exporting so low. We were barely exporting. The main things we were exporting is guns and military stuff to Israel, to other nations, because that's where we make a lot of our money in. But people are starting to buy from Russia and China, so they're moving towards our enemies instead of buying from us. And that's what Trump's tariffs have done. Trump's tariffs has brought strategic deals to make China weaker and to make Russia weaker, and overall make America stronger. That's the goal of these tariffs. The goal of these tariffs is to make America stronger. And yes, there's going to be a bump, but every tariff in history, American history, you can go back to the 1930s, where we tariffed other nations and we had a bump. But also, people say tariffs were the reason why we went into the Great Depression. That's not true. That's not true. Tariffs do have an increased bump, but historically, according to Yahoo Finance, they actually bring inflation down. They actually bring inflation down. Inflation will come back down. I'm telling you that there's always a first year shock, but afterwards, inflation does come down. Now, what have Trump's tariffs did as of 2025? Because this is a big thing. People want to know, what has the tariffs done for the American, or for America itself? The China 4.1, China negotiated. China actually negotiated with the United States. China never does this. China is a really ignorant nation. They're really strong, so they don't need to listen to the United States. They become the global superpower because we've become dependent on them, and they've also become dependent on the world and our allies. So Trump has seen this weakness in their economy, and Trump's tariffs forced China into a phase one of the trade deal. China agreed to buy 200 billion in U.S. goods, stop currency manipulation, protect IP rights, expand agricultural imports, according to the USTR Phase 1 agreement. Next one, manufacturing actually grew. From 2017 to 2019, this is Trump's before COVID, obviously, the U.S. added 480 manufacturing jobs, largest pre-COVID rise since the 1990s. Largest, right? By the way, in the 1990s, we still had some type of manufacturing before we lost it all to China. This was steel, auto, and chemical plants saw actual new life and actually saw American exports helped. Tariff revenue actually increased. Tariff raised $79 billion in 2019, according to U.S. Treasury. This revenue is without raising taxes on the Americans. So a lot of things, if we cut taxes, we lose on revenue. We make that back in tariffs. We make all that back. We made, I think this year, we made like $100 billion, maybe more, right, in tariffs. Right, in tariffs, we made that much because of tariffs. Steel dumping ended. Chinese steel imports fell 70% after tariffs, according to the debt of commerce. U.S. steel reopened and wages increased. And as the graph I show on the screen will show before the tariffs and after tariffs, after we started tariffing China. You know how important that is? I need to elaborate on this. You know how important it is to make China weaker. Okay, we all agree China is the guy that we need. Is the biggest worry. Okay, if China gets too powerful and we become too dependent on them, they could ruin our economy. So, and China's economy is very vulnerable. Obviously, you can put this in any AI, put this in any searches up. 20 to 30% of China's GDP comes from manufacturing. If we get Europe and in Asia, so we got India and Vietnam, two countries that do not like Russia, Russia and China, to start buying U.S. crude oil, U.S. gas, U.S. steel, U.S. manufacturing, that hurts China. That hurts China without extent. Okay, that hurts China without extent. China's GDP will collapse if they really start phasing out. By 2030, they will be phasing out, and you'll see China start begging the United States, and China will be weak again. 4.5, companies moved home. For example, Apple, the suppliers in Texas, U.S. Steel in Illinois, GM expanding U.S. battery plants, Toyota and Nissan building more U.S. factories. This is according to Reuters and the Wall Street Journal. So that equals more jobs. When businesses start coming back here, this is why Trump was so big. If you watch his 2016 debates, He talked about businesses are leaving our country and going to China, going to Mexico. Instead, they come back here because they don't have a tariff now. They don't have a tariff. So now we're actually getting jobs here, and the U.S. makes a lot of money when you get more people employed. That's why Trump's had the lowest unemployment of all ethnicities, and and makes more money overall because more people pay taxes and less people are on welfare. And if you don't see that as important, I think you're just crazy, right? Offshoring is slowed down, so we stopped buying stuff from offshoring, and reshoring increased. Historical tariffs. Henry Clay used tariffs to fund roads, canals, and railways, protect U.S. industries, and build early manufacturing strength. This was Henry Clay's tariffs. Result, according to the Economic History Association, U.S. rose into an industrial power. Industrial power. Remember, if you in U.S. History 1 or U.S. History 2, my bad, or you literally, if you just know the basics of basic histories, you will know that U.S. after World War II was the industry of the world. After World War One, during World War One, we were the best economy and the most best industries. That's because of tariffs. We were a tariff nation from 1880 to 1913, and that was high tariffs. We had the highest tariffs of all time in 1890 to 1913. During this era, U.S. became the number one steel producer and number one manufacturing nation and outpaced Britain. Remember, Britain during the 1900s and 1890s was one of the strongest nations and one of the richest nations. And those tariffs fueled the Gilded Age boom. This is proven. And also tariffs on Japan from 1970s and 80s. U.S. imposed quotas and tariffs on Japanese cars. In result, Toyota, Honda, and Nissan built factories in the United States. Those factories still employ tens of thousands of people today, according to CRS. The whole goal of tariffs is to bring manufacturing here, and when we bring manufacturing here, that overall boosts employment. It boosts employment. And yes, there's going to be a shock, but overall, tariffs have always helped the American people. Always. Tariffs have always helped the American people more than it's hurt. And when Trump proposed this plan, people were going crazy. And people were like, well, the economy's not doing great. Inflation is as actually in some instances actually deregulated, but most of the time it's been to a steady growth compared to under Biden. This inflation hit 9% at one point, going up and down crazy. And Trump is, while having those tariffs, when the tariffs are supposed to cause an economic recession, right? Economic recession. All the economists said that. Have you been through an economic recession? No. And by Q4, by Q2 next year, we should have a lot of more manufacturing exports. When we have more exports than imports, GDP should be around 3% or more. So closing out on this video, tariffs are not anti-trade and they're not protectionist, but tariffs are pro-America. We cannot depend on China for steel, medicine, technology, electronics, or semiconductors or basic supplies. If America wants strength, we need industry here, not overseas, not in China, not in any other country. Tariffs built America into one of the greatest industrialized nations of all time. Actually, the best industrialized nation of all time. And tariffs will build it again. Tariffs will build it again. And if hopefully JD Vance wins it again, wins the election, we get more tariffs because tariffs have been proven to help the economy. And people don't want to do free trade. We shouldn't do free trade to them. We should be tariffing them, get strategic deals, and help the economy. Thanks for watching. Please hit the subscribe, like and watch more. I promise to make more videos, and God bless.